The female orgasm is the most undiscussed form of biohacking that you have available to you. You can't use your skincare products in your vagina. People, don't be cheap. No, if you're on the pill, you're choosing the wrong partner. It's not who you would choose if you were off the medication. I remember being in the doctor's office. She was like, you need to go on birth control. And I was like, definitely no. She's like, but why not? I was like, because I said no.
Right.
I would definitely use condoms, whether you're on the pill or not.
If I'm being very honest with you, kind of scared to commit to the cycle syncing method out of the mental game of starting it.
Being a patient really showed me that we needed a platform to help us navigate all of these things that happen to us over our reproductive years. If you're non-binary, it will feel too much like an identification focus, but you can be aware of some things that you can do to optimize or minimize the symptoms that might make you feel uncomfortable. So you can use the information however much or little you want.
Welcome back to Thoughts May Vary. It's your girl, Metalark, popping in to say hi before part 2 of Alisa Vitti. And at the time of the recording this, it is the full moon, which is appropriate because that means your girl's period's coming any day now. And you bet your bottom dollar that period's going to feel great because I've been cycle syncing since 2020, thanks to Alisa. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar, just popping in to the show or this episode for the first time, our guest, Alisa Vitti, is incredible. And we have a part 1 where we cover all the basics of cycle syncing and get into a fantastic conversation. And today we're bringing you the juicy part 2. So be sure to go over and listen to part 1 first, and then come back and listen to this as well. Leave us a comment, leave us questions. Alisa was so wonderful. And that's about all you need from me. Be sure to send this episode to a friend that could benefit from using this information. Be sure to send the show to a friend, rate and review. Come say hi on YouTube. Yes, we are on YouTube. And have a lovely day. I'm hoping right now at the time of recording this, you're having a gorgeous full moon and a lovely day today. Enjoy that.
If folks do feel like birth control is right for them, do you have tips or guidance for how to still cycle sync and be in touch with yourself if knowing that that's a choice that you're making at this time that's best for you?
It's challenging because unfortunately, when you're on that medication, of course, you don't have a cycle at all.
Right.
You're not ovulating, you're not menstruating. Oh, wait, Alisa, but I still get a bleed once a month. It's not a period. It's just some breakthrough bleeding while your body is still reacting to the synthetic hormones. But even your doctor will tell you that should clear up over time and you should have no cycle. So you're kind of in like a no man's land with hormones. So there really isn't any need to cycle sync. But you do want to support yourself if you're on that medication. You want to take, this is why I formulated the balance supplements, for example, because you really do need to support with micronutrients. That medication is very, depletes you of a lot of key micronutrients. It disrupts the gut. You need to support your, brain health. And then you also need to strength train more than you do need to do cardio, even if you're younger, because of the impact that medication has. It causes you to lose, again, without your natural hormonal cycle, you actually lose lean muscle mass. You become more apt and prone to store fat instead of build lean muscle. So strength training is better as a let's say exercise focus than a lot of cardio when you're on the pill. And then, it's tricky with relationships because we know that these are just documented studies. We know if you're on the pill, you're choosing the wrong partner. So, you have to be very skeptical of like your dating reality because it's not who you would choose if you were off the medication. So I think if you are frustrated in any way with a relationship that you're in while on the pill, keep it moving. Don't get fixated on a particular relationship and having to make it work. Just be like, all right, it's not working. Next, like cycle through those things faster would be a recommendation as opposed to getting hung up. Because the irony would be when you get off this medication, you would literally smell this partner and be like, I can't stand you.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
be around you.
Yeah.
I can't, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like you just have a very visceral reaction that would be very different. But
It just
yeah, I would definitely really have a deep think about why you're on that medication.
Mhm.
If you're on the medication just to prevent pregnancy,
with
then
abortion laws, that's where I was going with this. It's like, how do we
yeah,
empower girls if that feels like the choice that's right for them
Right.
given the state they're in right now?
it's a really
Yeah.
bizarre time from that perspective. Even so, I think there is value in looking into the new technologies that are
Yes.
available to us because we didn't have those up until recently where you could just with a wearable
Or the
track basal body temperature or HRV. Basal body temperature is the gold standard, but you
yeah.
would know with exact precision, like medically
Mhm.
endorsed precision, exactly when you're ovulating. So you can do that every day,
Mhm.
and you do that for a couple of cycles, and you see your pattern. Then you would know that the egg is only well, now you'll know because I'm telling you. The egg is only viable for 48 hours
Mhm.
and sperm can only live in the body for 5 days. So now we're talking about 5 plus 2. We all can do that math. That's 7. 7 days you need to cover your cervix.
Mhm.
Okay? By you need a barrier method for
Mhm.
7 days out of the cycle. The rest of the cycle, you're not fertile. And anybody who's tried to ever conceive will tell you it's
Mhm.
really hard to get that window right when the egg is viable for such
Mm.
a short period of time.
Mhm.
So, if you're, let's say, in a super safe relationship where everybody's being thoughtful and putting health above, whatever, and you didn't want to use a barrier method for parts of the cycle, you could do that safely if you're using some of the femtech available today and using a barrier method for that 7-day period of time.
And that's something like you like the daisy temperature. Is it called daisy?
I like Daisy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that one. You could use your Apple Watch. I mean, they're tracking
Yeah.
HRV. There's so many ways now to track where you are in your cycle with that kind of precision.
I bet an
Um,
Aura Ring does it too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have one, but
yeah,
I'm
they
assuming.
do. They do HRV.
Do they? Yeah.
So that's really, really great because it'll tell you exactly when you need to be concerned. And then you can also get from prescription from your doctor for Phexi, which is my favorite new
Oh, my
product.
gynecologist gave me that.
No way.
What a nice
Yeah.
gynecologist you have.
Yeah, she gave me that.
I love hearing
Yes.
that. Yes,
Mhm.
Phexi,
What is that?
it's
Yeah.
a lactic acid gel. Lactic
Mhm.
acid, you buy products for your beautiful skin. You can also put the Phexi version of it in your vagina and you can't use your skincare products
No, no,
in
No.
no,
your
no, 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 no.
vagina. People, don't be cheap. Get the
That would
prescription,
hurt
get the
so
right.
badly.
Don't
Oh
do
my
the wrong
god.
thing.
Yeah.
But Phexi,
Okay.
you insert that and it prevents the sperm from moving. It's not the same as a spermicide, which is very harsh on vaginal
Mhm.
tissues and can actually, in some instances make you more exposed to STI contraction, in certain circumstances. But Phexi is really gentle, very supportive. Um, it's not going to cause any irritation and it is a barrier method, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
and you don't have to fumble about with some diaphragmatic thing that you might be
Right.
awkward with, and did I put it in right? Like it's
Right.
kind of a nice. I still am a fan, however, if you are not like in a committed relationship, I mean, I just really want to protect your cervix and I want to protect
Yeah.
your vagina and I want to protect your uterine health, the immune system of of this beautiful structure that you have. If you're not like in it to win it for life, and there's been like commitments made,
Mhm.
I would definitely use condoms if you're not all the time, whether you're on the pill or not. I mean,
Yep.
I'm just really hardcore
Mhm.
about that, to
Yeah.
the extreme. Like my now husband, I reminded him of this the other day. I was like, "Do you remember when I think we were on I don't know, our third date. And I was like, oh, I like this guy. I think at some point I'd like to sleep with him to myself, you know what I'm saying? So, of course, whatever I say inside my head usually comes out. So I said, hey, guy. I was like, I think you're nice. I might want to sleep with you. I'd like that to be spontaneous, however, because I'm not saying we're going to do that right now, but when I'm ready, I'd like to be able to do that and feel comfortable doing that. And in order for that to happen, I need you to, as I'm quoting myself, I need you to file your paperwork with me in advance. Quote, end quote.
That's
That
iconic.
is
And
a word.
I've said that on, several dates before I
Yeah.
met my husband, and he gave me the best answer I had ever received. Do you want to hear what he said?
Yes, please.
Please.
He said, without even like there was no beat taken. He just heard me say it and he goes, "What kind of an asshole would I be if I didn't have that in your inbox tomorrow morning?" And I was like,
Oh
"I
my
know."
god. You're like, "Marry him.
I did.
Marry him."
But even though there was a follow-up, even though he supplied that paperwork on time the next
Mhm.
day, also good way to engender trust is saying what you mean and meaning what you say.
Yep.
I we still use protection. And then I would also tell him, I visit my gynecologist every 6 months for an STI check.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Just so you know that I'm doing that. I want you to be aware that I'm doing that because if there is anything that happens, and I think it's important to take your care seriously because you teach people how to treat you. And as women, I think having a strong boundary around like, hey, this is a sacred space. I'm inviting you in, which is a gift. And here are the rules of engagement. So
Yeah.
bring your best energy and intention, please. I think that's a reasonable request, don't you?
Absolutely is.
Alisa,
I
I'm wondering how much you've researched mental health overlaps in this way where, like, as you're talking, I mean, I had this, I thought about this a lot reading your book, but again, in this conversation, I'm just like, wow, well, if I had this cycle syncing method and wasn't on the pill, probably wouldn't have had an eating disorder. Just all this like trauma and mental illness and upset, like it all could come back to possibly having being prevented if I was given access to this information in my 6th grade class, as opposed to don't have sex or use a condom or, get on the pill if you have cramps and that's it. It's just
Ugh.
unbelievable. Like, I wonder how many people have trauma and mental health concerns tied to
Yeah.
roots of,
Oh,
this.
the trauma piece, absolutely. I mean, it's what everybody's talking about their traumatic experience. But
Yeah,
you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. You're talking about potential trajectories, of
right.
how things could go. And yeah, it's the way that you've linked that all together is not like very loose connectivity. And absolutely, I think that the impact of not being shown and educated on how things work in your body, it really leaves us like out in the cold,
Mhm.
naked and afraid, like, and
Mhm,
on like, or in the woods without a tool, or like with
Mhm.
the inability to light I mean, it's very stressful. So just the not knowing how things work is traumatizing.
yeah,
Then
absolutely.
you add all the other things on top of that, and it's not an easy situation. And that's why I feel also like women are really excited about cycle syncing because it does heal some of that, not all, some of it,
Yeah.
because trauma is part of the journey. If it's there, it's there. But to
Mhm,
at least move forward,
mhm,
it's always frustrating to look back and say what could have been
mhm.
if only I
It's
had
honestly,
known.
for me, it's from a place of almost validation of like, "Oh, wow, like, I really was fed this narrative that was incorrect," and now similar to what Gabby, how you described your feelings in the beginning, like, yes, you release the anger and you can release the sadness and, like, moving through that and holding space for that is a real part of the process, but the liberation and empowerment that comes afterwards is just it makes me feel so hopeful that people like you are now raising children and, like, getting this entire narrative and conversation to
Mhm.
be flooding on social media, like, it really provides me almost so much hope for what the mental health trajectory can look like in the future as well.
Listen, there's so much to do. We're not
Yeah.
even close, I think, to really enough of a shift in the narrative where this becomes the new normal, especially, me now being around other moms of girls this age, and what I'm doing is still really, really the exception, and I'm not the only one, I hope, but for I think we're in an interesting moment. Younger women in their 20s are questioning, the necessity of suppressing hormones at a young age.
Mhm.
It's a great question and inquisition to be in. Um, and they're also opening up to this idea of living in a different way via the cycle syncing method. So that's already a trajectory shift in terms of that decade and what will come from those women. Um, but what's happening with, let's say, teen girls coming up right now, I don't think there's enough being done
Mm,
to really stop the hemorrhaging of what took place with you, for example. I think still a lot of girls get to puberty and fall into
mhm.
the birth control pill scenario pretty early on, and there just needs to be more dialogue and more education around that, and it's just going to take some time. But I would love to see uh, that shift, because why put young girls through that experience that you just outlined if we don't have to?
Yeah.
Why don't we offer them a different path? But it's a different way to be. And I think it does require women who are moms to wake up to the fact that you do have to take agency and direct care of your hormones. It's not something that you are passively engaged with. And that's a new concept for so many of us.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, oh, first of all, I know what my hormones do. Second of all, I, understand how they're changing. And third of all, now I have to do things to make them work. That's very different than the narrative, which is they're a curse, they're unknowable, there's nothing you can do to impact them. Suck it up, right? That's a big shift. But if we can all at least get on the same page that hormones have a pattern, they're really awesome, and you totally impact how they perform on a day-to-day basis with what you're doing, then the trickle down effect can happen, I think, with the daughters of those moms, and maybe we can kind of get there through
Mhm.
that back door, if you will.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm always hopeful. I mean, it's audacious to be hopeful, but I think it's a good thing.
Hey everyone, popping in to say thank you to all of the amazing people who listen and watch this podcast. We're so grateful for each and every one of you and truly cannot say thank you enough for tuning in every single week.
In order for us to keep bringing you all great conversations and continue building our community and raising the bar, we're asking you for some simple and free support. Subscribe to our channel, follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and keep up with us on social at Thoughts May Vary Pod.
And if you're looking to dive even deeper, you can join our exclusive Patreon community and download Co-Create, our digital manifestation journal filled with over 150 prompts to help guide your curiosity and unlock new layers of yourself.
Thanks for being here. But I'm just curious, like, do you work with a lot of folks that are non-binary that still want to be most efficient for their hormones?
I mean, I've talked about it so many times. I think that cycle syncing can be really useful in two ways, depending on how you want to identify, or if you are transitioning and you're taking hormones.
Right.
Um, so if you're so there's the identification piece. If you're non-binary, but you want to be supporting your cycle and aligning with that cyclical pattern, the cycle syncing is a great practice. If you're non-binary, you're not comfortable with that, then you don't want to, let's say, lean into it too much because it will feel too much like an identification focus, but you
Mhm.
can be aware of some things that you can do to optimize or minimize the symptoms that might make you feel uncomfortable, right? So you
Yeah.
can use the information however much or little you want.
Mm.
If you're transitioning, depending on what you're transitioning to, you either can use it to help connect more with feminine energy if that's a new energy that you're inhabiting, or you cannot use it and disconnect from that energy if you're moving into a different energetic state, right? So
Mm.
it's nice because you can use it, not use it, flex
It's
with it,
gender affirming care, whichever way you wanna
Mhm.
go with it.
whichever way you want to go.
Yeah.
This is so empowering and beautiful. Me too.
I want to talk to you a little bit about advocating for yourself with your doctor because I like I said, got put on the pill when I was 16, right when I got diagnosed with PCOS. And it was a very zero-sum game. It was like, this is what's happening. There's no other option. Then throughout the years, once I was living independently out of college, living in New York, finding my own gynecologist for the first time, that was a process that I kept getting hit with I would explain to them, I don't feel well, I feel numb, I it's very difficult for me to have sex. I'm 22, like this should not be happening. And I kept getting met with, sorry, like this is the option and like that's what happens when you're on the pill. Like use lube. Like that's what I just
What?
kept getting met with over and over
Yeah.
again.
Oh my
And
god.
as Meadow mentioned with like the imagine the tears when I read your book reading
Yeah.
about intermittent fasting and cardio, and I had been for years going to SoulCycle 6 days a week throughout my cycle, barely eating and intermittent fasting, and could never understand why I didn't look like my friends.
Mhm.
And then being so scared to get off the pill because of what I had been told about PCOS, being told I couldn't get pregnant, being told all these scary things. And then imagine my surprise when I get off the pill. And yes, the last, 4 or 5 years that I've been off of it, it's been a journey and it's not perfect yet, but I will take this any day and feeling like myself in my own body than the way that I felt all those years on the pill. And it frustrates me that like I've had to, not just me, all of us have had to fight with our doctors. And then it makes me feel like someone who doesn't believe in science when I'm arguing
Mm,
with my
that
doctor.
part.
How can we advocate for ourselves in rooms where we get met with like looking like the girl that just Googled something and thinks that she now is a doctor?
First of all, you do believe in science because you learned about some science in my book,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you made choices based on that, on those facts. And let me back up and say, and I say this all the time, you know, there is I'm never here to vilify the medical profession. I actually think that it's incredible what excellent doctors can do for patients. We're lucky to live in a country that we get access to such amazing medical care. That being said, doctors are not necessarily all trained to understand endocrinology, right?
Mm.
And, endocrinologists are, but, not every OBGYN is an endocrinology background, right? And also, they have limited tools. They have medication, they have surgery. When it comes to chronic menstrual health issues, which are rooted in the day to day self care practices that you are either doing or not doing correctly, surgery isn't often the right thing.
Mhm.
Medication sometimes isn't even available. And so what's left? Not by any fault of their own, but what's left is, well, let's check back in a year. And, maybe maybe use some of my, the Midol. There's not many tools available. So we can't criticize the medical profession because, there hasn't been any funding for
Mhm.
research, for
Mhm.
drug development. We're in a very new, very nascent place where there's a call for more research. I mean, Dr. Jill Biden was just at the New York Stock Exchange a couple of days ago talking about the fact that this is now something that we have to do. We have to start
Mhm.
studying women and we have to start making specific treatments for them.
Mhm.
So let's just, always let's separate the facts from the feelings, like I tell my young daughter. Um, it doesn't feel good being on the receiving end of these limitations, but the facts are that it's not like they're trying to do something to hurt you,
Yeah.
you know. But knowing that is helpful because then when you go in there, you're not expecting something that you can't get from them,
Mm.
right? Like you shouldn't expect them to be like, okay, well, yeah, you know, um, they're not all doctors are functional medicine trained, so you wouldn't expect them to have a conversation with you like, yeah, for your PCOS, you're right, you don't necessarily have to be on this medication, but it's going to require you to take a high degree of responsibility to really be on top of dietary and lifestyle factors. Are you prepared to do that? And if so,
Mhm.
I'm happy to help, either, refer you to someone who can help you with that, or encourage you to do that
Mhm.
and support you in that process. That's not a conversation that you should expect to have at your, conventional appointment. But what you can do is advocate for yourself. If you don't want to do something, you don't ever have to do something you don't want to do in any environment, anywhere,
Mhm.
at any time. Like, and that's really important because as women, we're taught to people please and just say, okay,
Yeah.
sure,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
Even though inside you might be like, no, I don't want to. I'm not down with this.
Yeah.
Right. But we just like smile and say, okay. And in medical settings, that's really potentially like life altering,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know? Um, I don't know how I ended up being this way. I mean, I don't know why I had this sort of intrinsic big boundary around this. But I remember being in the doctor's office when she was like, "Yeah, okay, you need to go on birth control." And I was like, "No, definitely no." She's like, "But why not?" I was like, "Because I said no."
Right.
Yeah. And that
And
can
it
be
was
enough.
and she was really like, "Okay,
Mhm.
I have not heard that before." And I was like,
Mhm.
"That's no isn't no means no in any situation." And I think that that's an important thing. You can even just say, "Thanks for that input. I'm not ready to make a decision today. I need more time to figure out what I'd like to do. When I am ready to make a decision, I can come back and talk to you about that decision." Right?
Yeah.
So if you're not, let's say, um, comfortable doing what I did, which is totally fine. I'm sometimes maybe borderline rude. I don't know. I don't observe myself as that way, but maybe that's true. Um, you know, I would definitely encourage you to just say, to ask questions and to say, great, let me marinate on this and I'll get back to you. Oh, well, let me write your prescription right now. No, I just need some time. I need time to take some time to make a decision. And then while you're out actually taking some time to make a decision, go get some other opinions, not
Mhm.
from Dr. Google, but from other practitioners or other resources that have information for you to give you the perspective that you need. The orientation is to be a researcher. If you're a researcher, you're always going to be asking more questions. And if you keep asking questions, eventually you will have enough information to make a decision. But women are so used to having to make decisions with no information about their bodies, like circling back to the beginning of our conversation, like in the absence of all this information, what you're just guessing, you're just saying, yes, okay, I guess so. You need to kind of switch into, how many like, let me just ask as many questions until I am comfortable. And then when I'm comfortable, I will then make a decision. And I will not be rushed into that decision until I am comfortable. And you know when you're comfortable because your nervous system settles down
Yeah.
and you can relax. But if you have that tight feeling and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do right now, like take a breath and then just say, wait, wait, I need more time. I think that's really the thing to do, is to ask questions and ask for more time and to say, I'm not ready.
I think I've been, frankly, if I'm being very honest with you, kind of scared to commit to the cycle syncing method out of the mental game of starting it.
Mm.
And
We should talk about how to start. Let's
yeah,
do.
well, I mean, hearing you talk about progesterone made me want to cry because uh, my progesterone is so low and my luteal phase is so bad. And being met with well, you need to just stop eating so much gluten and dairy is very frustrating. And then being met with okay, well, if this is really low and your testosterone is really high, let's get you on spironolactone. But because you have PCOS and we know you have PCOS, you're probably super insulin resistant. So let's put you on metformin also. And it's now gotten to the point where I think it's so kismet that we're having you on now of when you feel this overwhelming sensation that something has to change, but you're frankly scared of the mountain that you have to climb because it feels like you're doing it alone, what can we do? How do we start?
Okay. Well, there's like two answers to the question. One is for everyone, and that's general. And then there's also for PCOS women, because it's a
Mhm.
slightly different game of how to get started, because you have to get your cycle to be regular before you can start cycle syncing. So in your case, I wouldn't say the place to start for you unless you're telling, which we're not like, I don't know anything about your situation yet. So
Yeah.
let me assume you're not cycling regularly,
Yeah.
in which case I would say cycle syncing is not the place to start, which I outline in the book in that sort of section about if you have PCOS, here's what to do. We've got to get you ovulating and we've got to get that moving and progesterone levels up and blood sugar stable and that whole thing. And the flow protocol that I wrote about in my first book, Woman Code, which is now, I believe, in its 12th year as a bestseller in the women's health category on
That's
Amazon.
right.
I highly encourage you to just refresh yourself on that protocol because that's what you're going to do first. And then you want to check out the Restore supplements on flowliving.com, which I formulated with clinically evaluated doses of, for example, the combination of berberine and turmeric have been studied to be as effective as metformin in specific doses, which are
Right.
in this
Wow.
Oh,
formulation.
I love berberine.
So you can use that to help you with your blood sugar, with inflammation. There's other things in there that are helping with restoration of ovulation, like inositol, which many IVF clinics recommend to women who are trying to conceive and struggling with PCOS. So these are very safe and effective and known micronutrients that really help the endocrine system get the lift that it needs to restore a cycle. And so you want to do the food thing as as outlined in Woman Code, but you also want to help, and that's why Flow Living has been such a helpful hormonal healthcare company for women and why I built it is, my research has really looked, cycle syncing is one thing, one piece of the thing that I've done, but being a patient really showed me that we needed a platform that can really help us navigate all of these things that happen to us over our reproductive years. Right now, you're dealing with PCOS. In the future, you might be dealing with something else. How do we quickly get the information and the support that we need and the guidance and the right doses of things so that we can take those steps and not be confused and not be on our own going down Reddit rabbit holes trying to figure out what to do because that's not enough care, right? It can't be just you go to the doctor, you have a conversation, you take some pamphlets home and you wait and you like try to figure this out on your own. This is it's serious business to try to change your endocrine function. And this is not something that everybody wants to become a subject matter expert in. I get that. But having a place that has been around, I mean, Flow Living has been around for 12 years. We've been helping women, hundreds of thousands of women recover their periods from PCOS, get rid of fibroids, get rid of endometriosis symptoms, get pregnant, deal with perimenopause. We do this, we eat this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is, my favorite thing to do. Cycle syncing is just another tool in our toolkit. So I think for you and anybody who's dealing with PCOS and you want to be empowered around your cycle, get ovulating, get that back, right? And that you can do. And again, it's like cooking. If you start with the food changes and supplemental, micronutrient therapy, um, and you do that for a while and it starts to work as it should, great. If for some reason you're unable or things happen and you just can't get there, then you maybe can add in one medication at a time. Maybe you start with metformin first and then see how that impacts the androgenic effects on your, on the rest of your system before you add in multiple things at once. Again, go slow, right?
Yeah.
But give yourself, in any situation, I always say to women, give yourself the chance to try to heal and let the body do what it's supposed to do. And then you can always bring in, the other things if needed, the medications if needed. So that's the PCOS specific answer. Cycle syncing for women who have a regular cycle, normal cycling every month, but you're feeling overwhelmed with where to start. I would say the easiest place to start is with your workouts because it's just a scheduling conversation, right? It's just like, all right, you just like take out your monthly calendar or you download the MyFlow app because we
My
actually have.
favorite app ever.
I'm so glad. I
Ever.
worked really hard on it.
I check it daily. I'd like just in case, I'm like, what should I do? I'm like consulting it constantly.
I do too. And even though I've been doing this for a long time, I really love having my notes. I keep lots of
Yeah.
notes in the section around like what's happening with little things that I might,
Mhm.
emotional things, anything that I can do to just help myself navigate. But in the cycle syncing feature, you have workout videos that are tailored there. And our partner is Obey Fitness, so they're just
They're
the
great.
best because they're all their workouts are 28 minutes, which that's my favorite number. So like it's a great perfect amount of time to do a workout in every phase of the cycle, regardless of your symptom or condition. So that's why we
Mhm.
picked them. You can start with the workouts and just schedule them and notice how that impacts your PMS, because PMS is your litmus test, because I know 80% of you have a problem with that. So if you're like, wow, I'm not binge eating this PMS, you may still have other symptoms because you haven't changed the food yet. But if you notice things like I'm a little, my symptoms are a little better, right? Just from one cycle of changing just the aspect of workouts. Imagine what happens when it just becomes very
Mhm.
self-motivating where you get like, oh, maybe if I do more, right? And then I would layer on like one aspect of the food piece, like maybe just the calorie amount as a second
Mhm.
layer. After you do the workouts, month number 2, just get dial in the caloric intake. And then month 3, start to play with the recipes. And it's cool in the app, you can just click on the things you have in your pantry and it will
Mhm.
give you a recipe that you can make pretty easily. And it's not like elaborate stuff like,
Mhm.
I say I'm super lazy, and I know people think that's funny, but I'm more about, maybe it's the wrong phrase. I like to take the path of least resistance. So like,
Love.
You are a Taurus. Yep.
with cooking, I'm like, okay, let's roast a potato. Instead
Yeah.
of like,
Mhm.
let's make a souffle. I'm not like the souffle person. I'm like, how about we just roast some things, steam some things, then we arrange it on the plate with a sauce. I'm good. I don't need to make some fancy recipe. And so all the recipes are very simplified for that reason. So you can use the app in the 3rd month to help you start layering in the food type, the strategic food type. And then I think once you're doing that, you're going to start to feel so distinctly different that the productivity stuff you'll be like, I'm ready. I'm ready to layer in that last piece. So that's my 4-month kind of like very gradual workouts. Month
Mhm.
1, calories, month 2, strategic foods, month 3, productivity, month 4.
Mm.
Then of course, month 5, you should be synchronizing your sex life and having better orgasms in month 5. But that's a whole other thing. And I'm not just being flippant, obviously. The female orgasm, not climax, but the orgasmic plateau is the most undiscussed, potent form of biohacking that you have available to you. If you want to increase oxytocin production, which is this master regulating hormone that has down regulating effects on insulin, on cortisol, on all your sex hormones. The best way that you can produce maximal amount of this hormone is through clitoral stimulation that does not necessarily need to result in a climactic finish.
What was it?
Just
The 7 to 8 on a scale? What was
7 to
yours?
8, 7 to 8, hang out in the 7 to 8, edge around that, slow
Yeah,
down,
baby.
chill out, breathe. Try not to use the vibrator because it's too hard to resist the vibrator's rush to the finish. It's just too hard. I mean, we've all tried, it just doesn't happen. So, if you can do that on a regular basis, that's also health changing and so, so important.
You really wrapped up that was our last question for you
Oh,
because
the
it
sex life.
is such a hopeful and juicy place to end, but I just have to say, like, again, even when you were talking, it brought tears to my eyes because I was thinking about my husband's mother, and she was a nurse, and she was a Black woman who had to advocate for herself so much throughout the process of giving birth the 2 times she did it, and had complications in that, and she ultimately passed away really young in her early 30s. And I don't know how much of that is connected, obviously, but I just feel like you just give me so much hope. And if I
Yeah.
could make any book in the world international curriculum, like I think the empowerment that you're giving to the current generation, the next generation, like I'm so, so grateful for you and the work you do. It brings tears to my eyes,
Yeah.
truly,
That's
deeply.
very,
So am I.
very, thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
How's it going, y'all? It's Aaron. Don't let your Monday suck. Don't have those Sunday scaries. I'm tired of everybody waking up in the week saying, shit, it's Monday. You know what goes down? TMV releases every week on Mondays. Make sure you rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching YouTube, yes, TMV has a YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and ring that noti bell and never miss a thing. And also, join the TMV Familia by joining the Thoughts May Vary Patreon and by following at Thoughts May Vary Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for listening.
Great.
There you go.
Thanks, AB.
Got y'all.